So thanks everybody for being here today. We're really excited to have John Scott with us with the city of Fayetteville. We'll be introducing him here shortly. But today's topic for the quarterly speaker series is all about invasive plant species and removal strategies for local communities. We want to thank our sponsors, Beaver Water District, for this presentation, and also the city of Fayetteville, John Scott, and those we work with there. Okay. So I'm Becky Roark. I'm the Executive Director with the Beaver Watershed Alliance, and our mission here is to proactively protect, enhance, and sustain water quality in the Beaver Lake watershed and the integrity of its watershed. And we do that through education and outreach, technical assistance, and planning and analysis activities. And Beaver Lake is important to us because it is our drinking water source for over 500,000 people here in Arkansas. It also provides hydroelectric power, and it's a big recreation and tourism natural area. And a lot of people are working together to take care of this resource because it is a cornerstone of our community growth and economic development. So the Beaver Lake watershed is a priority watershed area in Arkansas, located up here in the Northwest Arkansas corner. And we're really focused on areas upstream of the dam here. So the dam is about located up here around Beaver, Arkansas. And all the tributaries that go to Beaver Lake here are a lot of opportunities to do land management practices. So this is the areas that the Alliance is working with many partners on to address several issues here. And part of our mission is to reduce sediment. It is the #1 pollutant to Beaver Lake, and over a ton of sediment is pulled out by drinking water facilities each day. So up here on the left, you'll see a map of the Beaver Lake watershed area. And according to our strategy, we do have some priority areas that we want to focus on here in the West Fork and around the lakeside area. And a lot of that erosion and sediment is coming from stream bank erosion or loss of riparian area, unpaved roads, and construction runoff. We also have a very rapid growing population here in the Northwest Arkansas area. And last we checked, over 32 people were moving here per day. And at this time, we have over 500,000 residents. But by 2040, we're supposed to have over 1 million people here in Northwest Arkansas. So with that comes land conversion and some land disturbance. So we have a really great opportunity to get ahead of this growth and think about how we can thoughtfully develop our landscapes. So we're here today to talk about one watershed management strategy, and that's invasive species efforts. And an effective management strategy can have a lot of benefits. It can improve watershed health, protect infrastructure, protect investments in parks, green assets, and other natural areas. It can help save money, and it can help provide jobs and training. It also just helps protect the Northwest Arkansas region. And I did want to just talk about one particular focus area up on Mount Sequoia Woods, which is located in South Fayetteville area. And the picture on the left is before, and then the picture on the right is after some invasive species removal efforts. So this was a 90-acre urban space in Fayetteville, and many partners have been working over several years to address invasive species up there on this mountain. And the Alliance had an opportunity to help complete a comprehensive management plan for this open green space. And we continue efforts to remove invasive species up here. And If you'd like to know more about this project, please do reach out to us, and we can share a little bit about some results from those efforts. And we also work with a lot of partners for watershed management. We just want to thank everybody that helps support us financially, but also in-kind support through volunteerism or in-kind services and goods for what we do. We have a staff of 7 here at the Alliance and a 20-member board. And if you'd like to contact us, you can reach us at info@beaverwatershedalliance.org. Call us. We have a website, and we recently just moved our offices over to Elkins, Arkansas, in the heart of the watershed. So we hope you'll stop by and say hi sometime. So thanks everybody for being here today. And I am just going to introduce Mr. Scott here. So John Scott is the urban forester for the city of Fayetteville, and he focuses on all things related to trees, sustainability, and environmental stewardship in the city. John has won numerous awards, including the Outstanding Professional Award from the Arkansas Urban Forestry Council. And before working for the city, he worked for a landscape design and build company. He has his master's degree in regional and community planning from Kansas. Sorry about that. And a Bachelor of Landscape Architecture from the University of Arkansas. And John likes to spend his free time in the outdoors, especially kayaking our wonderful local rivers and creeks. So John, we're so happy to have you here today and look forward to a really great program on how the city of Fayetteville is managing invasive species.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining us. Can you all see my screen okay? Good. It's amazing to see so many people on here. It shows you all really care, and that actually makes you all Karen. Okay, that's my last joke, and I'm going to get a nasty email from a Karen. Sorry about that. So invasive plants have become a huge problem, and frankly, it can be overwhelming at times. I know I've toured with Nathan recently, Sequoia Woods, and it is a little overwhelming at times to see how bad the invasive plant problem is. And our goal at the city is not to eradicate invasive plants. We don't think that's very realistic, but we do want to have them under control better in our areas. So today I'm going to be going over why invasives are a problem, a recent history on invasive plants, and then what we're doing about it with our code, volunteers, education programs, and what we're considering doing in the future, and then the flexibility and some other innovative programs that we're working on, and some partnerships. So for those of you who need ASLA CEU credits, I believe they're going to post a link in the chat so that you will have access to the 2 pieces of requirement, which is the quiz and the form, the evaluation form. And then once you've completed those, you're going to email them to arkansasasla@gmail.com, and that's for people who are trying to get landscape CEUs. And then I'll have that email address at the end of this. Okay. There we go. So why invasive plants are a problem? Invasive species have contributed to the decline of 42% of U.S. endangered and threatened species, and that includes plants and insects and animals. And for 18% of the U.S. endangered or threatened species, invasives are the main cause for their decline. This is according to the U.S. Forest Service. These plants are displacing our natives and not offering the same habitats or food sources that our natives are offering. And then according to data from the Center of Disease Control, Lyme disease cases have increased. It's estimated to be 476,000 cases a year in the United States, which is just shocking to me. And the best places for ticks, which is where you get Lyme disease from, is to live under bush honeysuckle. They have a relationship. Bush honeysuckle creates the perfect environment for ticks. It's dry, it's shady, and their host lives under them or likes to bed down. Deer love to hide under bush honeysuckle, and where they're deer, you're going to have some ticks, and the deer are as overpopulated as the bush honeysuckle, which is bringing more ticks. So this is why we have a problem with Lyme disease. Honeysuckles leaf out sooner in the spring than other plants, and then they hold their leaves longer than most plants too. So they're offering shelter for ticks that should be exposed to the elements, and when it's colder outside, they're offering shelter for ticks, and instead bush honeysuckle is allowing them to be protected during their larval tick season, which is something that was new to me, which is, again, why we're having increases in Lyme disease, and they're out competing our natives. This spring, I noticed that bush honeysuckle blooms longer than most other plants. I noticed they started blooming in March, and some of them still have a couple of blooms, and here we are in May. That's just incredible, long period of time. And I do see some Mayaples and other native plants trying to hang in there with the bush honeysuckle, but how long are they going to survive when they're so aggressive? So whenever you have these invasives, they're going to create a monoculture and colonize an area, which changes the habitat and makes it harder for native plants and animals and insects to survive. Other invasives are creating monocultures too. So if you've been on I-49 South, just past Mountain Bergen, where the 2 truck stops are, there's a field on your right-hand side that is just completely Bradford pears. I don't know what it was beforehand, but it's absolutely shocking to see when Bradford pears are blooming, how bad it is in this particular field. And then we also have it here in the city of Fayetteville. I noticed on the Cato Springs Trail, just south of Great House Park and north of Kessler, in between there's a section where we have a huge grove of Bradford pears. And I'm not sure if it's on our property or not, but it's pretty disturbing to see that. Invasive plants can also have diseases or pests that are accustomed to, they're accustomed to, but our natives are not. There's a problem with invasive plants hosting pathogens that native plants, animals, and insects can't handle. Armillaria root rot is a fungus that impacts ornamentals, fruit trees, rhododendrons. Lots of fruit-bearing trees are susceptible to this disease. White nose syndrome is another one. This comes from a fungus and infects the skin on the muzzle, ears, and wings of hibernating bats. Some of you might have heard about this already. This fungus has killed millions of bats, and it's a big problem, and it's confirmed that we have this in Benton and Washington County. In Hawaii, they are having another problem that's impacting their forests just because it was a pathogen brought in by an invasive species. And these are all pathogens that are suspected of being introduced by invasive plants. So I'm going to mess the word pronunciation of this. Alleolopathy is when plants release chemicals that affect other plants, and plants are communicating through chemicals and battling each other and assisting each other, and they're doing all kinds of communicating, but it's done predominantly with chemicals. Some of you all may know black walnuts produce a chemical that makes it hard for other trees to grow underneath them. Juglans, I believe, is the name of the chemical, and it creates the little black spots on concrete or in the lawns, and that's a form of alleolopathy. Tree of Heaven can produce several 100,000 seeds per year, and with each seed establishing a deep taproot that allows the plant to grow quickly and establish dense colonies. And then the leaves of the Tree of Heaven contain an allelopathic chemical that suppresses germination of seeds and root growth of competing plants, which I'm just kind of stunned sometimes when I learn about some of the things that plants are doing. And this is a new one on me, that they're, producing chemicals that suppress germination of other seeds. So that's pretty insane. Simply put, invasives are using chemicals to prevent natural reforestation from happening. If a forest is not able to regenerate due to invasives, what's that forest going to look like in 10 years? Then again in 20 years, then 30 years? Trees naturally die, and if there's not any reforestation happening naturally due to invasive plants, what's our forest going to look like? It's a pretty scary thought for me. and how this is relating to our stormwater and watershed. When invasive plants like ivy or clematis or other ground cover, there's very little root structure to most of them to bind the soils, and that's why large areas dominated by invasive plants are more likely to erode during flood events than areas with diverse understory of trees and shrubs, which provide a lot more root structure and diversity. And I've got this picture up here. And this looks like a lawn next to some sort of stream, but you can tell by looking at this picture, there's not much roots at the top on the right-hand side. So you can see the soil eroding, which is producing sediment, and it's going downstream. So this is a particular, it's a lawn, but here's another example of what the root structure should be looking like for a natural area. And you can see how bigger the roots are and how much longer that they are. And, you know, if you think about, well, this one is eroding on the right-hand side, yes, but it's probably being contributed to the erosion due to something on the left-hand side, because it's going to make that storm event a lot more intense, which will erode stream banks that are natural and in good health, because it's just offering a lot more turbidity and a bigger storm events are happening. And then you're going to have increased pollutants due to trying to use chemicals to try to control these invasives. And then chemicals are entering in our watershed, which is causing another problem. Okay, so a little bit of history on invasives. President Bill Clinton signed an executive order mandating specific actions. It also defined invasive plants, which was a crucial thing to have done. In Fayetteville, the list was created in an open participation. We have actual invasive list of plants on our code, which can't be planted. I'll go into that a little bit more. But we had an open participation process which involved 13 stakeholders. The stakeholders included nursery owners, managers, landscape architects, academic experts, landscape installers, hobby gardeners, botanists, naturalists, conservationists, city park managers, and local citizens. 18 plants are on the list, and the change was adopted in an ordinance and was passed in November 3rd, 2015. So we're in the process of updating our code to add more invasive plants. The request was given to us by the Arkansas. Can y'all hear me again? Did I get muted for a bit? Okay. Okay, so we're updating our code, and Arkansas Native Plant Society is who has asked us to do this. And they had an excellent criteria set up for what plants to add. And I worked with the Arkansas with our Urban Forestry Advisory Board and the Native Plant Society to set up. And they sent me a spreadsheet. This spreadsheet was amazing on recommended lists, and what they've done here, I find it just incredible. This was sent to me by Jennifer Ogle and the Arkansas Native Plant Society, which they're just wonderful to work with. I can't say enough wonderful things about them. But they've ranked the invasives according to how many counties they found these out in the wild. And Arkansas has 75 counties, but you can see that some of these are in most of the counties, and they've really helped identify what the worst offenders are and helped us decide, you know, how we're going to use this list. And then they even went farther and added where these plants are found in our Northwest Arkansas counties, and they used Benton, Carroll, Crawford, Madison, and Washington counties. So this was an excellent reference for us. And then they had two landscape architects, Sarah Gertz and Alan Osner, kind of review these and let them know if they're used in landscape designs. And that was an excellent piece of information as well. The only missing piece, I think, was if you can get them locally or not, which is another criteria that we look at. And so from this list, we've got a new list of invasive plants that we are going to add or try to add to our code, which is another 22 plants. So that's a good thing. Having codes that limit the use of invasive plants is a simple stance that most communities can do. It shows a dedication to the problem and the environment. It's a simple step for municipalities to not allow commercial developers to use native plants. Our code is a lot of times misinterpreted, and basically what it does, we don't go out and say, hey, you got to take out this plant, or we don't go to nurseries and say you can't sell Bradford pears. We're not doing any of that. Our code simply says that when you are going to build something, you present us with a landscape plan with the plants on it. We're going to review those plants and make sure you're not planting Bradford pears or privet or anything else, and we're going to tell you to change your plans. And we're going to most likely give you a list of plants that you can choose for to replace what you're doing. So the developers have just got on board with it, and it's never been a big issue with them at all. There's not any plants on our invasive species list that, they're just dying to use. And that's a good thing. So I think they're more concerned about profitability than they are what plants they're actually going to use. But our code just prevents developers and new development from planting any new anti-invasives adding to our problem. It doesn't prevent homeowners from planting what they want, and it, like I said, it doesn't mean we're going to go out and ask people to remove invasive plants from their yard or their business. It just gives us a review of their landscape plans, and we prohibit those invasives from being planted. I'm going to open it up for quick questions if anybody has any at this point. I can't really see that chat very well, but we're going to keep it casual in a meeting style and ask if you all have any questions. Or you can unmute yourself and ask.
So we have one question in the chat box. What are the new trees planted in front of the old standard register factory in South Fayetteville?
What are the new trees?
New trees planted in front of the standard register factory.
Off the top of my head, I don't know. I do know they submitted a plan. So I think we did review them, if my memory, but I would have to go dig up their plans to find out or look at them. Just
They said they look like evil pears.
do they? If we reviewed it, then they're not pears.
John, sorry, this is Melissa Evans. I'm the other urban forester at the city of Fayetteville, and I did review those plans. And it looks like, I don't know, within the last few years, they did plant Bradford pears along the street. So when I reviewed those plans, I said, please remove them and replace them. And I think the plans indicated that they would remove and replace most of them. They have a lot on that property. And again, in our role as urban forester, we can recommend it. We can't necessarily make them do it, but I think they are going to replace a lot of those, thank goodness.
We can deny them any more building permits if they don't get this fixed. We can do stuff like that. And, we've never been pushed that far to do that, but we certainly have that ability to deny them a new, but I wasn't aware of that particular situation. And, we do get other places that call it, like Washington Regional, that medical complex there, they went in and removed all the invasive Bradford pears they have in there. And I've been working with them to do some replanting around that entire complex. But yeah, it was an example of, that whole 80s planting or 90s planting of invasive plants. So that happened quite a bit. Good question.
Okay, another question. Do hardware garden stores follow any protocol in regards to what they can sell?
They don't. That was something that was debated quite heavily when they initially created the invasive plant list, and it's viewed as an overreach on our part, and that would be something that would put a target on our back. And we already have a target on our back for having a tree preservation ordinance in Arkansas. So, that was not something we're going to go down. I think personally, I'm interested in finding out who some of the buyers are for like Walmart and their garden department, Lowe's and everything like that, and talk with them. I think, you know, there's potential for them to switch it up. They're always advertising during the summer that they're, you know, your local home garden store. But if they were to add that, you know, they specialize in native plants to their specific regions, I think it would even, you know, up the ante for them specifically, the big box stores and Walmarts and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's something I'd like to pitch to them, but it's a matter of me finding time. I think that would be something they need to do on their own. And it's going to have a monetary benefit for them to actually change from selling Bradford pears and other invasive plants. But yeah, we can't do much about that.
Okay. Does Arkansas law have a noxious weed list consistent with the invasive species list?
I'm not certain. I'm not certain.
What methods are you using to remove these species from forested areas?
I will get to that.
Perfect.
Okay. So here, what are we doing about the invasive problem? We have various programs along with our code that prohibits new development from installing them. So we have the Bradford pear bounty. I'm not sure if you've all heard about this. This idea came from the Urban Forestry Advisory Board and was kind of inspired by the Burmese python bounty in Florida. Florida has several invasive animal species that are wreaking havoc on their environment. The Burmese python, the Nile monitor lizard are two of the biggest offenders, and they do have a bounty where they pay you for killing a Burmese python. We're not going to pay people for killing a Bradford pear, but we did test this, and it was really a successful program. And it's simply, you take a picture of the tree that you've chopped down as it's fallen, and then you email it to me with your name and your address, and then I'll give you 2 plants, either a tree or a shrub, in exchange for those. So it's pretty simple. And then I put the trees out in our parking lot with their names on them, and they come and get them. And we even did this during COVID, and it was, you know, very successful. The first year, I think I had 17 participants on it. And then this year, it's our 3rd year, we've had 50 participants, and I gave away over 100 natives as a replacement. This may not sound like a huge success, but the outreach and education portion of it was massive. And it was kind of off the charts and went viral, which was fantastic. It was carried on, the first Bradford pear was carried on the news across the country. It was in USA Today, Southern Living, and other media outlets. And it was a massive success on educating the people. And other cities and municipalities have replicated this program in their own respective areas. And I don't spend a lot of money on this. I spend less than $1,000 each year on this particular program, which is not a lot to considering how much, you know, education portion we get out there. And then even after the dates are gone for the Bradford pear, I still get several emails and phone calls asking about it throughout the year. So that tells me that it's on people's minds, and I'm telling them, well, just chop it down and then take a picture of it and use it next year. So, you know, it's really working as far as an education tool. Education, it's something that we have to talk about a lot when it comes to invasive species. Unfortunately, the general public, I don't think, is aware of the problems that I imagine most of you all are aware of with invasive species. So we have to talk about it a lot. And we create, Lee Porter, the former urban forester and local, has created an excellent education packet while she was working for the city. And it shows you the invasive plant, the bloom, the characteristics of it, and what it likes, and the impact. And then it has a native alternative and several other native alternative suggestions. And it's just a wonderful tool. And I will have that available as a link at the end of this. We go through, we have all 18 plants on it, and I will have to go in there and add the new plants to it. But we're making some progress when it comes to education. So on our management techniques, we currently identify an area that needs a lot of help. We can do as much hand removal with puller bars, saws, loppers, mattock. Most people call those a pickaxe. And then we will treat a stump with chemicals. We're not a big fan of chemicals. I'm not personally a big fan of chemicals, but I do understand when you have a problem on the scale that we do, that sometimes you gotta use we bring out the big guns, and unfortunately we have to use glyphosate. And then we will send the debris to our compost facility with the city, and it gets hot enough that it kills the seeds in the seed banks, and then we continue to do this. And you can kind of see our results here. This is Clarence Craft Park, and it's, you know, one that we have a volunteer group. Our Urban Forestry Advisory Board goes to this park a couple times a year, and we do invasive removal, and it's really making a big difference. I know we got some dead trees and stuff showing in here, but you could see the big swath of bush honeysuckle and privet that's now missing from that picture, right kind of in the middle. So let's talk about volunteers. We rely on volunteers quite a bit. We have several boards and organizations that take over spots to help control with invasives, and my board has taken over Clarence Craft Park, which is really small neighborhood park. Kind of a side note, if you get a chance and you want some good reading, pull up Clarence Craft. He is has an amazing story and is a war hero and a great philanthropist. So if you get a chance, Clarence Craft. So we go out there twice a year, and it's definitely making a difference. Even with the year off for COVID, it is still helping. We could, you know, we went back this spring, and, you know, it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. Then we have an environmental action committee that has taken over north of Veterans Park in Fayetteville, and other groups have other areas they work on. It gives them a little ownership of these particular parks, and they keep going back to the same area so they can tell and see their results. But an interesting thing that's happened with the Environmental Action Committee and the removal of bush honeysuckle in Veterans Park is that they've done a great job on removing the bush honeysuckle, but now there's an Asian bittersweet problem. So they've removed one invasive species and another is taken over, which was really disheartening for them and for everybody. But you know, we're running several test pilots in the area to try different techniques to get rid of the new problem that's happened. So I encourage you all that belong to professional groups or civic or social groups to do an invasive plant removal. It really helps, and to identify an area that you'd like to work on. And then our volunteer coordinator, Christina Jones, who she can help if you're working in Fayetteville, organize, and we supply a lot of the equipment and the tools, and we will come by and pick up the debris. We have the debris, as you can see, is set on the sidewalk, and our trash and recycle people come and pick this up the following week whenever they get it on their schedule. So it's an excellent program. And that's my dog Trixie right there. Just thought I'd share that. Okay, and then what we're doing in the future, we understand that eradication is not really a realistic goal. We're just trying to get it under control. And what control looks like as a whole, it's another subject that I need to delve into. I'm not even sure what control of the invasive problems looks like in a citywide situation. But we're going to consider other means to help with it, and we're considering adding controlled burns to the arsenal of weapons that we use. Working with administration, parks, fire, and others to get more controlled burns as part of our management practice. There was a burn done on the south side of Fayetteville this spring by the University of Arkansas and the Nature Conservancy, and it was real helpful controlling the invasives there. And then we're looking at having regular burns and rotating areas that that help control these invasive. Controlled burns are also help with the safety issue, because I don't know if you guys remember 2017 or I can't remember, 2017 or 2018, Pigeon Forge in Tennessee, which has similar topography and climate that we do, it caught on fire, and it did millions and millions of dollars worth of damage, and it was very, people died in it. It was really bad. but they've never had controlled burns, and it's something that we need to keep in mind to keep the fuel down. The fuel would be leaf litter and other natural forest debris that comes down, and it becomes dangerous and really stacked over time. So, you know, having controlled burns keeps that fuel down. This is a forest mulcher. I'm not sure if anybody has seen one of these, but the city is getting one of these, and it's another tool we'll have at our disposal. Certain areas are so bad when you go into them that this equipment is a great starting point, and it's one of the best options we have. If you have there's a small forest south of, or as part of Lewis Park, it's just to the south of it, to the south of the soccer field, and it's going to require us to remove all of the understory because it's just completely overwhelmed with bush honeysuckle and privet. And there's a little bit of a problem with the forest mulcher. It's taken me a long time to come around to using them because they're so destructive to the entire understory. And there's other good things still growing in an understory. And if you have somebody that's sensitive and can identify what understory plants are there and try to avoid removing all of it, it's really helpful and makes a big difference on these forest mulchers. But it's a machine, so it's not recognizing what's good and what's bad. It's just removing everything. But sometimes you have to start from scratch when it comes to removing invasives. Okay, there are 2 companies in Northwest Arkansas that do this work. Invasive plant removal is now a business. That's how bad it is. So that tells a story right there. And I suspect there's going to be more businesses that crop up in the future because it's a bad problem. Another consideration the city is looking at is the full-time employees that just work exclusively on invasive removals, which is expensive. But that we're at a point where we have so much property as a city, and there's such a big problem that we need a team that's probably dedicated to removing just invasives. And with all these other techniques, it would really help. So this is a tough one. And then we talked about large companies selling plants and hoping they stop selling invasives. And when it comes to nurseries, I think a lot of people at this meeting know which nurseries they're using for natives, and those nurseries are naturally popular due to word of mouth because of their dedication to using natives instead of invasive plants. So I think from a business standpoint, really focusing on natives and not selling invasives for nurseries it's a great idea. So getting them on board eventually might be something that the city looks at, maybe not necessarily as a punishment, but as more of a, hey, these are your nurseries that specialize in native plants, because that's what we're really wanting our local nurseries to do. And when somebody asks advice on stuff like that, what trees to plant and everything, I always say go native. Don't plant anything that's not native. Stick with your natives. And so we have other ideas, and we're still trying to figure things out. And that's the thing with invasives. This is all we're learning as we go. The invasive problem is, not really been put on the radar until the last maybe 2000. It should have been on the radar a long time ago, but it doesn't seem like it was until the 2000s. So this is all relatively new, and we learn things as we go, and we try things out. And I learned recently that when you cut down bush honeysuckle at the stump in the spring, that there's enough sap flow that it'll totally get rid of any chemicals that you put on it. So it's pretty ineffective when you're cutting bush honeysuckle down in the spring because of that. So there's little things that we keep learning on this with this subject, and it's it's interesting, and being flexible and, thinking about new and creative and innovative ways to handle invasive problems is the way to go in the future. So to summarize, we're using several different methods for controlling invasives. We have our code, which is limiting planting of invasives in future developments. And like I said, the development community has had very little kickback. We don't hear much about it at all. And then we're using our volunteers and having our groups take a strong control and ownership of their particular parks or their areas that they're working in. And that really helps when they would come back over and over again and they can see their results. Education is another key that we rely heavily on. And you got to keep talking about invasive plants and the problems that they're causing and how to remove them. So making sure that is on everybody's radar is a crucial thing to do. And then being innovative, like creating the Bradford pear bounty or any other, being flexible and open to new ideas on how to do this or educate the public or any of the other ways to do it. And being flexible and, learning and opening your mind up to, what's new when it comes to invasive plants, because this is a new field basically. And there's a lot of adjustments that need to be made for it. Like now we have Asian bittersweet in Veterans Park, and we're going to have several different test pilots with the university and the Environmental Action Committee. They're going to try some different techniques in these different plots up there for removing the Asian bittersweet to find out which one is going to be working the best. So being open to those ideas is really great. Patience is another key for this. This is not a short-term process or a short-term solution for invasive plants. This is very long-term. The initial challenge, I look at invasive plant removal in 5-year blocks. You start with the first year and you do the initial cleanup, and then you have to keep coming back over and over again. And then maybe by the 5th year, you can start adding native plants into the mix. That's how long it takes. And this is a long game, and being patient about it is a crucial thing. And then having great partnerships. There are other groups out there thinking about this problem from different angles. Connect with them, foster good relationships with them, create more allies to combat the problem. We have the Beaver Watershed Alliance, and they're a fantastic ally. We have the Arkansas Native Plant Society that's also helping. And then we have the Arkansas Urban Forestry Council, which is helping. And then Nature Conservancy. The list goes on and on. So there's a lot of different groups out there that are working on this. And then there are some other groups, like the trail groups that are creating the mountain bikes, and they're great allies to have as well. And they've done some invasive removals as well. So it's just making sure you have lots of allies. I want to thank Becky and Anna from the Beaver Watershed Alliance for doing this program. I really do appreciate it. And I'm going to open this up for questions. I was a little quick on that, but we'll see what questions we get.